Auditing Theory Chapter 3. The auditor's responses to assessed risks. PSA 330. Overall responses. The auditor should design and implement overall responses to address the risks of material misstatements at the financial statement level. Such responses may include emphasizing to the audit team the need to maintain professional skepticism, assigning more experienced staff or those with special skills of using experts, providing more supervision, incorporating additional elements of unpredictability in a section of further audit procedures to be performed, making general changes to the nature, timing, or extent of the audit procedures. Audit procedures responsive to risks of material misstatements at the assertion level. In designing the further audit procedures, the auditor shall consider the reasons for the assessment given to the risk of material misstatements at the assertion level for each class of transaction, account balance, and disclosure, including the likelihood of material misstatements due to the particular characteristics of the relevant class of transactions, account balance, or disclosure. That is the inherent risk. Whether the risk assessment takes account of relevant controls, that is the control risk, thereby requiring the auditor to obtain audit evidence to determine whether the controls are operating effectively. That is the auditor's intent to rely on the operating effectiveness of control in determining the nature, timing, extent of substantive procedure. That's the detection risk, I assume. Obtain more persuasive evidence, the higher auditor's assessment risk. Considering the nature, timing, and extent of further audit procedures. The nature of further audit procedures refers to their purpose, test of controls or substantive procedures, type, inspection, observation, inquiry, confirmation, recalculation, reperformance, or analytical procedure. Timing refers to when audit procedures are performed or the period or date to which the audit evidence applies. Extent includes the quantity of a specific audit procedure to be performed. Test of controls. The audit is required to perform tests of controls when the auditor's risk assessment includes an expectation of the operating effectiveness of the controls. Substantive procedures alone cannot provide sufficient appropriate audit evidence at the assertion level. Tests of operating effectiveness of controls are performed only on those controls that the auditor has determined as suitably designed to prevent or detect and correct a material misstatement in an assertion. Testing the operating effectiveness of control includes obtaining evidence about how controls were applied at relevant times during the period under audit, the consistency with which they were applied, by whom or by what means they were applied. Substantive test procedures are performed in order to detect material misstatements at assertion level and include tests of details or of classes of transaction, account balances, and disclosures, and substantive analytical procedures. The auditor's substantive procedures should include the following audit procedures related to the financial statement closing process: agreeing or reconciling the financial statements with the underlying accounting records, and examining material journal entries and other adjustments made during the course of preparing the financial statements. The auditor should perform audit procedures to evaluate whether the overall presentation of the financial statements, including the related disclosures, are in accordance with applicable financial reporting framework. Evaluating the sufficiency and appropriateness of audit evidence obtained. Based on the audit procedures performed and the audit evidence obtained, the auditor should evaluate whether the assessment of the risk and material misstatement at the assertion level remain appropriate. The auditor should conclude whether sufficient appropriate audit evidence has been obtained to reduce to an acceptably low level the risk of material misstatements in financial statements. If the auditor has not obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence as to a material financial statement assertion, the auditor shall attempt to obtain further audit evidence. If the auditor is unable to obtain further audit evidence, the auditor shall express a qualified opinion or a disclaimer opinion. Documentation. The auditor shall include the audit document The overall response is to address the assessed risk of material misstatement at the financial statement level and then the nature, timing, and extent of the further audit procedure. The linkage of those procedures with the assessed risk at the assertion level and the result of audit procedures. If the auditor plans to use audit evidence about the operating effectiveness of the control obtaining in prior audits, the auditor should document the conclusions reached with regard to relying on those such controls that were tested in prior audits. The auditor's documentation shall demonstrate that the financial statements agree or reconcile with the underlying accounting records.